There's something in our quarantine house with us. Part 4. Lockdown Day. 2:46. That night I woke up to Ryan screaming at the top of his lungs from the depths of the basement. It was a painful, wailing, guttural howling that almost sounded like he was being burned alive. I wondered if this was a dream. But I jumped out of bed and ran to the basement door, where it was all silent again. I wondered what it was I had heard. I called out to Ryan. Ryan gave no response. I stood in front of the door for minutes wondering if I should open it and check on Ryan. I heard even more hideous sounds from him. He cried out, saying he was drinking the disinfectant, and to let him out so he could drink some more water, because it was burning him from the inside out. I thoughtlessly began to tear down the makeshift barricade in front of the door as he pounded on the wood. I cleared the last bit and unlocked it. Ryan came screaming out to the back porch door to the decontamination unit. I tried to stop him and asked him what the hell he was doing. I asked him if he was okay, and he seemed quite okay. I knew immediately that I had been fooled. He kept repeating what he couldn't believe. It worked. It worked. It worked. It worked. He kept on chanting at the top of his lungs as he pulled a large cardboard box inside the house from the decontamination unit. I was stunned. I had no idea how the box nor all of the booze inside the box got there. It smelled of disinfectant spray, even. I turned on the porch light and looked around for Rachel. It's the only possible explanation, I thought, but I didn't see or hear anyone outside on the porch or in the yard. I asked Ryan how he got all the liquor, and he said he dreamed it. He said he dreamed walking out of the basement, through the house, into the yard, into the neighbor's house, taking a box and filling it up with their booze. He said he dreamed carrying it back to the porch and spraying with decon spray before he woke up in a sweaty fit in the basement. He said he was sorry for faking he was drinking the disinfectant in the basement, but he knew there was no other way that he'd be able to fall asleep again soon enough to open the door for himself. Ryan turned to put his box of lifted liquor on the countertop when the wooden cabinet door became fuzzy. The grain started to become liquid and blotchy, and in it I could see a face. The door swung open and smashed Ryan's face. Ryan dropped to his knees, bashing his chin on the countertop as he fell. He yelped while clutching his face before trying to come to his feet. Ryan spit out a chipped, bloody tooth, and a flash of murderous rage filled him. He went upstairs to get something, but he came to an abrupt halt at the foot of the stairs. He raised his hands as he slowly walked towards the back, towards the kitchen. He was followed by a collection of sharp knives suspended in midair, pointed at various parts of his body. Ryan muttered he would kill Devin the minute that he got back to sleep, as he was held at knife point. He grabbed his box of stolen liquor, and he acquiesced as he was forced down into the basement once again by the knives in midair. The knives fell to the ground once Ryan was all the way into the basement. Then a great force surged from the thin air into my side and my arm. My arm was twisted into an armbar, and I was pushed against my will into the basement. I slipped and fell down the entire flight of stairs. I screamed and yelled as I fell battered against the concrete steps. I climbed to my feet and made it halfway up the staircase. Then I was dragged by both wrists up the stairs to the door. One by one, my 4 fingers on my right hand were wrenched open and fully extended from my clenched fist. Something unseen was forcing my fingers and my hand into the open door hinge. I cried out to Ryan to help me, but he appeared unconscious. My fingers were being squeezed numb, and they had red pressure imprints pressed into them. I struggled against my own arm and my own body to free myself as the door began to rock slightly. I felt the pricks of the splintery, rough corners of the door on my hand. I felt like I was going to dislocate my shoulder as I felt the door start to bend my fingers in the wrong direction and crush them in the lever. I screamed and cried for help as loud as I could. I didn't know if anyone would hear me. I was hoping someone could hear me. Anybody could hear me. Maybe the neighbors. Maybe the neighbors who had just experienced a phantom break-in could hear me. It was my only hope. I must have screamed for 20 minutes as the door came close to crushing my fingers in the wedge. I was hoarse and sore and sweaty, and finally whatever was holding me there let go of my hand. I wrenched back, cradling my sore, hyperextended, splintered fingers. They hurt so much and were so stiff I was worried that they were broken. Through the hopper windows lining the rim of the basement, I could see blue and red lights flashing. I ran over and propped myself on some boxes and looked out. I could see a military vehicle with a red and blue light bar patrolling slowly nearby. It stopped and 2 soldiers with rifles got out and began to walk the block. I wanted to try to scream again, for them to come over, but my voice was so worn out, I could only gag and hiss, anything louder than a whisper. Even if I could have yelled for help, it would have made little difference as I watched in amazement as their armored vehicle suddenly came under the control of a force that was mere millimeters from mangling my hand. Its engine and gears ground a bit as it lurched forward, slow at first, then faster down the street. The 2 soldiers stopped to stare at each other before they took off running after the possessed vehicle. The loudspeaker on top began to broadcast in an all too familiar voice. It was Devon's voice, and he was using it to broadcast that people should come out of their homes, that it was safe, that the disease was a hoax, that the real disease was all in our minds, that we were becoming more ill the longer we were forced to wallow with it within our homes. The loudspeaker repeated the statement once before the vehicle ripped 2 volleys of machine gun fire into the air. Then the vehicle swerved and crashed into a parked car on the street about 2 blocks away. As insane as it was, it occurred to me that it was possible to dream and take disembodied actions in the real world. There were no ghosts, there were no demons, it was only us. It became even more imperative I confront Devon and see what I could do to wake him up and keep him from falling asleep again. I climbed down from the boxes and ran up the stairs where I found Devon in the flesh at the top of the staircase. He smiled and then shut the door and locked it, and I can hear him resetting the barricades and stacking up items against the front of the door. We were trapped. Lockdown day, 2:47. Ryan and I had a plan to stop Devon. After we could hear him muttering his plan to short-circuit more transformers, extend the range of our slumber disembodiment, and commandeer some of the larger, heavily armored military vehicles sent on more numerous patrols of our neighborhood after the previous evening's incident. He intended to force the military to let him out, to let him free, to let him have a tank and go where he pleased. All we had to do was go to sleep. If Ryan or I could manage to get to sleep, there was a good chance we could free ourselves through our dreams. But Devon wasn't making it easy, as he moved all 3 TVs to the door of the basement and other places where the door or access to the basement was thinner. We were bombarded by a constant barrage of bad music and worse video game noises all day and all night. We were getting hungry in the basement. There was a small washtub sink was becoming disgusting as it was our main water source and only toilet. Our heads pounded from the loud booming noises. There was nowhere to hide and nowhere to sleep. Ryan tried to drink himself out, but he knew what I knew, and that he wasn't likely to trigger REM sleep that way. I started formulating a plan in my head. I think I only started murmuring it after Ryan started talking about Devon almost killing him twice now, and that in time, he would kill us both. We couldn't get out of the basement. We knew no one had found us yet. We couldn't actually open the windows to yell outside. To do so risked infection, and once the authorities had seen us expose ourselves, we could be subject to arrest, and that would be a worse situation than what we were in now. We'd be wherever Rachel was, probably. We talked about killing Devon. I talked about mixing the disinfectants with other household chemicals in the basement and cycling them through the furnace ducts to the upstairs. The deadly gases that would fill up the house would either drive Devon out or kill him while leaving us relatively unharmed so long as we could manage the flow of the vapors. Lockdown day, 2:48. Devon, in his dream demonic form, had succeeded in creating corona discharges across 4 blocks during his last nap. A larger military presence was building up in the vicinity, with larger, more heavily armed and armored vehicles, but still no tanks. Ryan and I have not been able to sleep long enough, or with enough REM, to put our dreams to work to stop Devon. It left Ryan and I to argue about whether or not we should try to kill Devon. It became quite apparent Ryan was ready to kill him. Absent poison gas pumped upstairs, Ryan wondered if I could make an explosive to blast open the basement door and barricade after our attempts to cut a hole in the ceiling through the floor failed. I told him I didn't have the proper ingredients in the basement. We talked about whether or not we could dispose of the body after the gas had dispersed. We talked about whether or not we could tell the same story, keep the same secret, in the event someday things ever went back to normal. What would we tell Devon's family? Ryan asked me what we would tell Rachel's family. What we would tell Rachel. He asked me what he wanted to say to my family as he grimly assessed the difference in body mass and the starvation ratio. He told me that even if I didn't help, he would do whatever it took to remove Devon. I decided to try something. I wrapped my ears and eyes in the towels lying around. It muffled the constant booms of Devon's gaming. My head was pounding and desolate, and my eyes were filled with static from being awake the past days. I guess it wouldn't take me too long to fall asleep. The dream state, the disembodied state, was a profound experience. The world was shimmering around the edges of my vision. Everything looked slightly distorted, like viewing things through a fish-eye lens. I was a little disoriented at first, almost like vertigo, but I felt no nausea, and it was easy enough to concentrate my thoughts to right myself. It felt like every part of my body was squeezed, like the tingling feeling of a foot falling asleep. Although I was adapting to the new way of viewing my world, my hearing was completely different. My movements sounded like the bath faucet running with my head under the water. Everything sounded echoey with reverberations. My head felt completely clear. After a few minutes of being adjusted, I felt like I could see whatever I wanted. I was unlimited in what I could see and where I could move. I passed through the door to the basement without a second thought. I looked around. I looked all around the house and found Devon sitting in the den, Xbox controller in hand, surrounded by boxes of stolen goods. His face was dripping with chocolate ice cream. I went back to the front door of the basement door. I imagined the touch and feel of moving the barricade items out of the way. I slowly and carefully twisted the lock open so we could escape when I woke up. I felt like this was mission accomplished, but I couldn't wake up. It occurred to me I could always float down through the floor and perhaps wake myself up. I realized even if Ryan and I escaped the basement, then what? Devon had the knives. He had the scissors. He was clearly losing his mind. I could go anywhere in this house. And I entered Devon's room and found his collection of weapons. I carefully picked them up piece by piece so as to not make any noise and carried them into the bathroom at the end of the hall. I considered cracking the window, but this window, like the others, were sealed with winter plastic and tape. While I could transit through solid objects, I could not transport any one solid object through another solid object. I took to sliding each blade into the recessed vent fan in the ceiling. I was carrying the last knife to the hiding spot when Devon, apparently pausing his game for a bathroom break, spotted the knife sailing from his room through the hallway. He stepped away at first, then went for the knife. I stepped aside and felt my flash of anger, and the knife was buried into the wall. When I say buried, I meant the blade was bent and twisted into the drywall, and the cheap plastic handle was broken into chunks in the floor. The wall itself was buckled and rippled as if it had been thrown into an action hero. With that, Devon took off from the hallway and ran towards the basement stairs. I gave chase, forgetting I could move faster than he could, as I was not confined by the walls. I passed through the kitchen and the porch, and that's when I saw her. I saw Rachel in the decon chamber. I saw she had her own disinfectant and was about to enter the house. And that's when I woke up. I woke up in the basement. I tore the towel off from around my eyes and saw Devon and Ryan were fighting. Devon was cursing up and down. He was going to kill Ryan, and then me. That this whole thing was over. He said he'd kill everyone around so that he could get out, so the virus couldn't be spread. He said people were the real virus. Ryan kept him at arm's length with a spray bottle of our most dangerous disinfectant. I peeled the towels off of my ears. Rachel shouted from the top of the stairs, and Devon and Ryan stopped their standoff. She held 2 bags of groceries at the top of the stairs. Devon and Ryan pushed and shoved their way back up to the first floor. Rachel explained she took a detour to try to get attention to the transformer issue in the backyard. A few screw-ups and near messes with the camps later, she got help and brought back fresh groceries. She also brought back the electric company crew who were responding to multiple transformer-related issues in the neighborhood. Devon, Ryan, and I turned our attention to the backyard through the kitchen window. Masked personnel in power company uniforms rode cherry-picker lifts up to the transformer. Devon fell to his knees, sobbing. He kept murmuring he was so close, so close, so close as he slammed the sink cabinet door into his head in a half-hearted attempt to knock himself out and try to enter the dream realm once more. Ryan encouraged him to bash his own head in as he rummaged the grocery bags and found a 6-pack. Rachel and I looked at each other. She asked me if anything interesting happened here while she was gone. She asked me if I got a hold of my folks, like she always did. She asked me if her mom called me. I didn't reply at first. I was stunned with how normal suddenly everything was. How normal it was to have Devon rolling in a fetal position on the floor, and how normal it was for Ryan to be shotgunning beers. Rachel had no idea how close everyone came to killing each other, to dying, to murder. How close Devon came to massacring the neighborhood in some half-baked attempt to end the quarantine for himself. And yet none of this was actually resolved. The cat was out of the bag. The paranormal was real. The fact Devon and Ryan wanted to kill each other was out. The fact Devon wanted to kill me was out. The fact I almost killed Devon. The knives were out, so to speak, and yet they weren't. No one knew where the knives were hidden. No one but me. No one but me.